what punishments are for. It's titled Punishments as Mean of Correction. It starts out by saying, I hope to engage with people who do use or have used punishment as a means of addressing behavior. I'm interested in what you do, although the particular physical act is of less importance. What do you hope to achieve, and why do you believe a physical punishment is the means to obtain that? The person is not referring to spankings or punishments or inflicting pain on another person as part of the play itself, but say your partner does something genuinely transgressive. They raise their voice to you, and that's a rule break in the Kink dynamic, and then you decide to punish them. How exactly does that work? Because you can imagine there's a different dynamic at play between punishments and remediative punishments. So how do you think differently about those two things?
There's a lot of depth to this idea, actually. And part of the reason it's difficult to discuss is because it is very contingent upon several different aspects of the relationship itself, and so it can manifest in a lot of different ways. I'll give you one example. If you're in a monogamous relationship and your partner cheats on you, you punish them. That's a bit odd, right? Because there is a bit of punishment aspect to almost any punishment. If you, God forbid, you catch your partner doing something heinous, they're molesting your child, you don't punish them. Like, you don't give them a spanking. That's not an appropriate, rational thing. You've transgressed outside the boundary of the relationship. So all of this is within the boundary of the kink relationship. And so the appropriateness of anything is bound by the rules of that relationship. Now, in my own experience, for instance, I have had a partner who broke a rule. I'm not much one for punishment because, and this is what I'll get to in a second, so we'll loop back around to this idea. I very much dislike brats. I don't like the game of breaking rules or being rude, or I take it as being rude, of being sassy. I perceive that as disrespectful and rude, and I want to exit the relationship immediately. That's my immediate response. Don't stop it, go. Don't collect $200. I'm not interested in punishing you for being rude to me. It's not a game. And that means that I'm
just to be clear, though, I'm not sure we're talking about bratty behavior. Are you just going on a tangent here and coming back?
Well, I'm going to loop back to this in a second. I think it'll become clear. But if a partner broke a rule, in this case, I'm thinking of one specific incident, she knew that she had fucked up and felt very guilty, and I was upset about what she had done. And she wanted to, after we talked it out, that was the first thing, she wanted to be punished so that she could leave it behind. And I found it was useful in the same way, is now you've been punished and all sins are paid for, we're never going to bring it up again. In no future fight does either one of us get to bring this up again. It's been paid for. And there is value in that, in the ritual symbolism of having left a transgression behind. I think there is some significant value in that. So that's one use of a true punishment, a non-punishment punishment. I think another use is attempting to use it for behavior correction. So the sub wants to follow the rule, but is having trouble remembering or is having trouble whatever. Okay, you can try and use it in those ways. I think there are better options, but I think there may be a role for it in that regard. So why choose this option rather than other options? Probably because there's a bit of punishment involved. So if you're actually trying to correct behavior, setting a reminder is a lot better to help someone who's forgetful than a punishment after the fact, or a punishment after the fact.
Well, what if the dominant is genuinely upset and angry about something? So you were talking about in your particular case, the sub apologized and actually asked for the punishment so that there could be a symbolic closure of the incident. But what if there's an infraction? I am the one, as a dominant, who is genuinely upset, and an apology has been made, but I'm like, no, I want to actually administer a punishment. I want it to actually hurt. I wanted to be uncomfortable. I wanted to remember the next time you're sitting down that this thing happened. And to what extent can it be, or should it be, a cathartic mechanism for the dom to reach for and utilize? Or is that a toxic or maladaptive deployment of punishment? And I say that and I question the toxicity of it because it's coming from a place of genuine anger. And you have to be careful with that in relationships where you have so much dominance over somebody else. Because there's a thin line between, no, this is justice. This is not my anger. This is for your own good. That's a very thin line. And, being on the other side of that line where you are doing something out of anger and then pretending to evoke a moral good, you get to hypocrisy. And that is just a very toxic, very unwise sort of stance to have.
I would argue that punishing out of anger while you are in the anger probably is a pretty bad idea. However, I think there is a version of this very analogous to what I gave with my submissive earlier, where she was feeling guilty and the punishment was a way of releasing that guilt. I think there is a version where the dominant is feeling angry and it's becoming resentment, and the punishment can release from resentment. But it actually takes quite a bit of forethought to figure out what punishment would genuinely release your resentment. And and I can only comment on my own psychology here, but I don't think a physical punishment would do that for me personally. I don't think there's a level of pain that would do that for me personally. I question to what degree is that really necessary for me to move past resentment. I don't have a correlate in my own experience. I feel like if I'm feeling resentful, it's a conversation to be had more than a punishment. I don't know that I've ever been in a situation where the punishment was really the thing that let me move past the resentment.
I can relate to that instinct, because then that entire punishment thing can actually become maladaptive in the sense that if you truly still have resentment, but then you've ritualized some sort of cathartic gesture, and that didn't really work. What, for example, you spank her until you can't spank her no more, and then she's begging for and you're still resentful, right? And then you agreed beforehand, once this is over, I can bring it up, but you're still resentful afterwards.
That's a deep betrayal, actually, from the Dom's part, because you made a promise that I'm going to let this go, and then you don't, and that's a huge issue. And usually you wouldn't. I mean, I find it hard to believe that any spanking, no matter how severe, would release you from resentment.